Good evening. This is Sharon Anderson with the Leiomyosarcoma Support and Direct Research Foundation, or LMSDR. And we are thrilled to have Ben Zola with us from Count Me In to explain about the new LMS project. So Ben, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sharon. Hey, everyone. It's great to see you all. Great to be here to talk about the LMS project and Count Me In. I also have Mary McKinney here, who's the manager of project operations at Count Me In. So super excited to have her with me this evening. So my presentation will be a couple of slides and more conversational. So I encourage you, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to interrupt me at any time to ask. And we'll also leave some space for questions at the end. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can go ahead and get started.
Can I ask that everybody mute themselves during the presentation, please? Thank you.
All right, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. So as I mentioned, today we'll be talking about Count Me In and the Leiomyosarcoma project, which has recently launched as of September 21st. Just to get us started, what is Count Me In? Count Me In is a nonprofit research initiative that engages with patients and enables them to accelerate cancer research by sharing their samples, their clinical information, and their voices. One thing that's special about Count Me In is that 85% of US cancer patients are treated in community settings. And what that means is they may not normally have access to large-scale research institutions where big studies are taking place. So I always like to say, I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm very close to Mass General Hospital. I can walk there if I wanted to, but that's not the case for everyone. And the way that Count Me In projects are set up is that it enables everyone, regardless of where they live in the US or Canada, to be a part of cancer research. Oftentimes also in these community settings and in hospitals, after samples are collected for a biopsy, they're simply stored at the institution and not much else is done with them. So through participating in projects like the LMS project, it gives patients an opportunity to share their samples so we can learn more about them and aggregate that information and release it after de-identifying it so that researchers can more quickly make discoveries. So the LMS project, as I mentioned previously, launched on September 21st. So almost a month into the project launch, which is super exciting. As we were developing the project, at Count Me In, we identified and recognized an unmet need for LMS research just in general. And we thought that our research model that we use for general Count Me In projects could help fill some of the gaps in this space. We also received funding that allowed us to launch another patient-partnered research initiative specifically in leiomyosarcoma to help optimize patient engagement and further study cancers such as leiomyosarcoma and osteosarcoma, which is another project that recently relaunched. So some major goals of the LMS project. Our aim is to utilize the data generated by this project to help better understand the landscape and treatment of leiomyosarcoma. That's the big picture goal. So after participants share all of the information with us, which we'll go into a little bit more detail later about how to participate and what that all entails, our team will aggregate all of the data, take out any identifying information, and release it onto publicly available databases so that researchers can more quickly make discoveries. We also have some additional goals for the project through the funding that we've received, which is really exciting because in the LMS project, we have the opportunity to start sharing what we've learned from the sequencing of tumor samples back with participants. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later on as we talk about participation. But traditionally in previous Count Me In projects, all of the data would get released and de-identified, but we weren't able to share any specific information back with participants about their samples. And now we have the opportunities to start doing that. We also want to study how we engage with patients through a collaboration we have with the PECGS network, which is the Participant Engagement in Cancer Genome Sequencing Network. And we also want to collaborate and share with the rest of the PECGS network about what we've learned from this project, as well as our other PECGS project. So anyone who has ever received an LMS diagnosis at any point may participate in the project if they live in the US or Canada. So those are the major goals of the project. And before I get into how to participate in the project, are there any questions that anyone has about the big picture goals? All right, so I'll jump into how to participate in the project. And again, stop me at any point if you have questions. The first step is to provide consent for the study. So when you log on to lmsproject.org, there will be a button in the top right corner that says Count Me In. And once you click that button, you'll be able to register for the study. We'll ask a few quick questions to confirm that you're eligible, just making sure that you live in the US or Canada. And then you can indicate that you've been diagnosed with LMS and you'll create an account. After you create the account, the consent form will allow us, it will give researchers permission for you to take part in the study. This form covers everything that you need to know about what we're doing in the study, the goals of the study, and it is a pretty lengthy form, but we've tried to separate it out into key points when you first open up the document, and then you'll see the full document that gives more detail to all of the points that we previously covered, and then you'll be able to sign the consent form and begin participating in the research. So after you've signed the consent form, all of the additional steps of the project are completely optional, so you can participate in as many or as few as you'd like once you've signed the consent form. The next step is to tell us where you've been treated through our medical release form. So we'll ask participants where they've been treated for their cancer so that we can request medical records and, if applicable, archive tumor tissue. So our clinical research coordinators on our team will request medical records, and after we've received them, we will look through them and see what procedures patients have been had done, and potentially be able to request tissue from the institutions where those procedures happened. And once we get those tissues back in-house, we can be able to perform sequencing on them, which I'll go into a little more depth in later. And then after you complete the medical release, you have the opportunity to respond to surveys about you and about your experience with cancer. So we have a few different surveys in the project. The first survey is about your cancer. And in that survey, we are asking questions about when you were diagnosed with LMS, any locations where the LMS was present, and any treatments you've had. We'll then move on to the About You survey that asks questions about sex assigned at birth, gender identity, race, ethnicity, and some health literacy questions. And one cool thing about the About You survey is that we have a question that says, tell us anything that you'd like about your experience with leiomyosarcoma. And that's really impactful because a lot of research initiatives don't provide patients with the opportunity to share whatever they'd like about their experience. And this can be a very personal experience. So we feel that it's important for patients to be able to share whatever they think or whatever they would like to share about their experience with LMS. We also recently developed a family history survey, and this allows participants to kind of map out what their family looks like and any family members that have been diagnosed with cancer and general age ranges. So those are all of the surveys that we have for the project. And after you've completed the medical release and the surveys, you'll be able to provide a saliva and/or blood sample. So these samples will be sent to, the sample kits will be sent to your house, and there will be return shipping on the boxes. So it'll be easy to provide a sample and return it to us at no cost to you. For saliva samples, you're able to provide the sample wherever you'd like at your house. And then for blood samples, you're either able to bring it to your next appointment and ask for a courtesy blood draw, or you're able to go to Quest Diagnostics free of charge. We can provide a waiver, a voucher, so that you're able to get that blood draw done free of charge if the place where you receive your treatment won't do a courtesy draw. And the importance of the the saliva and blood sample is that we're able to compare the normal DNA from the saliva and blood with the DNA in the tumor to perform whole exome sequencing, which looks at all of the different proteins, all of the DNA that express proteins in the body. And we're able to use that sequencing information to release to researchers. So again, as I mentioned before, we will remove any personal identifying information before we release this data. But all of the information, including survey responses, information from the medical records, as well as the sequencing from tumor, blood, and saliva samples, will be aggregated, remove any personal identifying information, and then will be able to be released onto different databases. Some of those databases are open source so that anyone can access it. And then there are other databases that have more like raw sequencing data that has a little bit more sensitive information, and that's not open to the general public, but it is open to researchers with certain credentials. Is there any questions that I can answer so far in terms of how to participate in the project?
Hello. Once you start doing the consent and providing information on where you've been treated and the different surveys, about if you answered every single question on this, about how long would it take?
That's a great question. Thanks for that, Kathleen. I would say from start to finish, about an hour. I think some of our surveys are a little bit more complex than others. So the family history survey is relatively complex because you're adding information about those in your family tree. But I would say the About You survey and the About Your Cancer survey each take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the speed that you're answering it, as well as the level of detail that you're providing in your answers. And then I forgot to mention that as you're signing the consent form, it is a lengthy form. So you're able to come back, you're able to start reading it, come back and finish filling it out at your convenience. There's no pressure to sit through the entire process, start to finish. You'll have your own participant dashboard that you'll be able to refer to and able to come back to at any point in the process. So you can take breaks, you can come back another day. We want to make it as easy as possible to participate. Any other questions for now? Great. Then I'll talk about some of the additional benefits of participation in the project. So the first thing is obviously stay involved. We want to provide participants with regular updates about the status of the research, share any discoveries that have been made from the data that we have released, and we may also contact participants to participate in focus groups or provide additional feedback related to the overall project experience. So not only has it been important to involve patients and communities as we're building out the project, but we really want to make sure that we're keeping engaging with them after they've participated and as they continue to participate in the project, because they are the ones that are going to benefit from this research. So we want to make sure that we're keeping them engaged. Another benefit that we're able to offer, if you'd like, is for participants to receive information about what we've learned from their tumor sample. So after completing the consent form, you'll have the opportunity to complete an additional consent form, and that will ask if you would like to receive what we're calling shared learnings about what we've learned from the sequencing of your tumor sample. So this is a little bit different than what you would receive if you got like a lab test done, because it's meant to share general information about what we've learned from the sequencing of your tumor sample, but will not have an impact on your clinical care. This is our first opportunity at Count Me In to be able to share any individualized information back with participants. And we really want to highlight that we're grateful for participants sharing the information that they have with the project. And it's really important for us, and we've received a lot of feedback over time, that it would be great if we can give something back to the participants. So this is a really exciting opportunity. Of course, it's totally optional because we recognize not everyone may want to learn about information that we've received from the tumor sample, but if you would like to do that, you have the opportunity to do so. And one more benefit to participation, if you would like to, is to learn more about your normal DNA. So I mentioned that your normal DNA comes from either a saliva or blood sample. And after you provide either a saliva or blood sample to the study, you'll have the option to complete a form to provide an additional saliva sample, which will be sent to our partners at Invitae, and they will sequence the germline or normal DNA from an additional saliva sample. And that will be done using a multi-cancer panel, and participants will be able to speak with the genetic counselor to understand these results. So that's another exciting opportunity that we're happy to offer as part of the PECGS grant for the LMS project. So that's all I have to say about the benefits of participation, but are there any questions about keeping participants involved, learning more about your information we've learned from the sequencing of your tumor sample, or learning more about your normal DNA?
I'm not sure if this, maybe I should have asked this earlier, but if it doesn't have to be a fresh tissue, it can be in paraffin block?
Correct. Yeah, that's a great question. For the study, we will only request paraffin blocks. So it's fixed formalin paraffin embedded, so FFPE. We don't accept fresh or frozen tissue for this project, but we're able to still perform the sequencing on paraffin blocks.
Thank you.
Welcome.
About how long does it take, like once you get the paraffin block, to get information back about sequencing?
That's a great question. In terms of the time it takes after we've received the tumor sample, this is a complete, in terms of being able to share information back with participants, this is again something that's new to the project. So we don't have a specific time frame of how long it takes. But in general, from the time that we request tissue to the time that we receive it, sequence it, and then we send it over to a clinical pathologist over at Boston Children's Hospital, and they will formulate kind of like a shared learnings letter that we will upload into the dashboard. So it's a little bit different than what you can expect if you were to get like a test at Quest Diagnostics. I would say it would take several months, but I don't have a more specific estimate at the time. I think as the project progresses, we'll have a better sense of how long that will take, but I would say it would be on the order of several months.
And I have a question. And what exactly would they be teaching us about our tumor? Would it be about the mutations we have, or what?
Yeah, that's another great question. Thank you, Sharon. Again, we will be passing this information to a clinical pathologist at Boston Children's, and she'll be able to formulate a letter that has information based on a few common mutations that are seen in LMS. And if you log on to our website and click participation at the top of the screen, which I can navigate to in just a second, I can actually show you what it looks like for, we have a sample shared learnings letter, which is not exactly what every participant will see, but it's a good representative example of what folks can expect. So I'm just going to quickly log on, click participation. And we have a little bit of a PDF example. It's kind of written in a letter format. And this will talk about different genes and how these different deletions or amplifications or different mutations will be described back to participants. So this is just a sample, but as you can see, it tells a little bit more about what specific amplification or deletion or mutation we found, and then kind of what that means in English rather than biology terms.
Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So this is something we could take to our doctor, and our doctor can look it over and explain more to us too.
Exactly. Yeah. And while this is not meant to impact clinical care, it's done with clinical grade sequencing. So we're able to incorporate, if your doctor would like, they're able to incorporate that letter as well as any information into your medical record.
I think what is unique too is with the testing of the hereditary factors, that you actually get a session with a genetic counselor.
Yeah, that's a super exciting opportunity. And again, that will be done with Invitae, who we're partnering with, as well as Genome Medical, who will be offering the genetic counseling services. So anything about the normal DNA that's heritable will not be included in any of our data releases for the LMS project, but it will be a great opportunity for participants, again, as you said, to speak with genetic counselors, both before they get the testing done to kind of understand what may be looked for in the test, as well as after, so that they have a better understanding of what the results from the test mean.
Ben, I have a question here. How do I get my thing on? I
can hear you.
on? Can you hear me? You can't see me though.
I can see you.
You can't see me. So what am I doing? I don't know. It's been so long. Okay, I'll just answer this question. I'm sorry, I should have asked this a long time ago. So this is just launched like a month ago. Have you gone, I guess I'm kind of, my doctor is going to say, well, what is this? And why are you asking me to do all this? And I don't have time to do this, send a sample or something like that. Have you had any problems with that? Or just, do I need to talk to my doctor and say, hey, that I'm joining this group or this count me in, and explain it a little bit better to them? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, Sandy. In terms of involvement with your doctor, a lot of the tissue requesting that happens and medical requesting that happens will be done between our clinical research coordinators and the pathology departments at the hospitals and at the institutions where you've received your care. So it won't be directly interfacing with your doctor. So that kind of, I don't think your doctor will be burdened with a lot of medical record requests or tissue requests. That'll be handled by the pathology department. However, we definitely encourage you, if you would like, to tell your physician about the project. And on the project website, we have a space called For Your Physician, and it will allow you to download a PDF that you can bring to your appointment. And it just tells the doctor a little bit about what the project is, what we're looking for, and how it works.
Oh, great.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing, Sandy, you don't need their permission. The only thing is when you sign the consent and send it in, they take care of the rest. Your doctor doesn't have to do anything.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So.
Yeah, it's great.
So your doctor seeing this may feel more positive about actually sending your records for a full sequencing, which maybe before that, they might have been considering how much it would cost.
Right. Yeah, that's a great comment, Doreen. And we will, CountMeIn / the LMS project will cover any fees that are associated with requesting tissue or requesting medical records. So neither the patient or the institution has to worry about any financial burden associated with getting the records, getting the tissue. And since it's done through the pathology departments, we try to make it, we try to ease the administrative burden on the participants as well as the doctor as much as possible.
If we have tissue from multiple surgeries, you'll request it from each surgery? Yeah,
so we have tissue requesting guidelines that we'll use because, and that's a great point. Thanks for that question, Kathleen. We want to make sure that any tissue that we collect for the project does not interfere with any clinical care that you're receiving. So we've partnered with our scientific leads to develop tissue requesting guidelines so that we can request any tissue that will not interfere with your clinical care. So if you've had multiple procedures and a lot of tissue associated with them, we will likely be able to receive tissue from multiple procedures. But let's say you just recently had a procedure with less tissue, we may avoid requesting tissue from that procedure in case it could potentially impact your clinical care. And in the request forms that we send to the pathology departments, we have a sentence that says, if you think this will impact clinical care, please do not send the sample to us.
Okay, no, I've got plenty to go around. Everybody can have some. Now, one institution where I've had surgeries done, the pathology department never seems to cooperate with anybody sending it out, even though there's multiple paraffin blocks there to go out and plenty to go around. Can you notify us so we can help you with that, or if you're not getting the samples, or is there a way to comment on that somewhere in what I'm filling out, saying if you need help with this institution, let me know?
Yeah, that's a great question / comment. So typically we won't communicate directly with the participant about the interactions that we've had with the pathology departments. But if there's ever a need, sometimes institutions will require a wet pen to paper signature in order to be able to release samples or medical records to us. And if that's ever the case, then we'll directly reach out to you and ask if you'd be willing to sign those forms. We're also able to re-request tissue if we don't hear back from an institution. So there's a few different avenues that we can go in terms of that, but did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Can I add one thing, Ben?
Yeah.
And hi, everyone. I'm Mary. I work with Ben. I'm the manager of project operations at Count Me In. You also could put that in the tell us anything question in your survey. You could just add that in and say, hey, if you have trouble getting tissue from this place, please feel free to contact me. Because as Ben was saying, that's kind of like you can put whatever you want there. And so that would be a place where you could actually put it down in writing if you wanted to.
It's a great point. Thank you, Mary. Are there any other questions about participation or potential benefits of participation? I have a couple of slides to close us out, but want to make sure that I address everyone's questions.
Are there any downfalls to participating? Why wouldn't somebody do this?
That's a great question. I think this is a minimal risk study because we're requesting archived tumor samples previously stored, and it's mainly collecting data and releasing it. We take data security extremely seriously, but obviously there's always the potential. There's never a way to be 100% sure that every single piece of data will be 100% secure all of the time. But with that said, we do everything in our power to make sure that is the case at all times. So I would say that's an extremely minimal risk, but that could be something that weighs on someone's mind in terms of whether or not they would want to participate. And of course, if you have any questions as you're filling anything out or want more specifics on data security or really anything, we have a project phone number and an email that you can contact us at any time, and we'll be happy to return your call or email.
I think, Ben, I'll just add, I'll second that. I think that in terms of why someone might not want to participate or decide not to, I think I can just speak based on experience with other studies. I think though the main two things we hear from people are maybe they decide that although the risk is so minimal, they're not comfortable putting their data out there. They just decide, you know what, I don't think this is for me, and that's completely fine. And then I think the other thing is sometimes people are concerned, although there's an opportunity, you don't have to opt into providing tissue. Some people decide that they don't want to participate for that reason. Although, you know, you can opt out of tissue and still consent for the rest of the study. So there are many options, but I think in my experience, just based on the past few years that I've worked here, those are kind of the reasons that people usually tell us if they decide that they're not interested in participation.
And let me add, the LMS community did a tissue drive, and we got about 500 samples over a decade. And one thing that I wanted to make people aware of is when you have an operation for a typical MET, there's usually like 20 blocks available, if not more. So there's plenty to go around, and they do destroy these after about 7 to 11 years. So it's really worth donating a block for researchers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Sharon. Terry, I see you have a question. I'll give you a second to unmute, Terry, but if you have a question, happy to answer. Terry, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm just having trouble.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, if you can hear me, I'll go ahead with my question, Ben. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. It's very informational and helpful. I spoke with Sharon Anderson a couple of weeks ago regarding my son having leiomyosarcoma, and he passed 11 months ago. And we did the one foundation, the genetic testing, also the Inviti? The sequence, yes. And also Ryan, before he passed, we talked about tissue donation, his tissue to be donated for research, and he really wanted to do it. And I wrote out for him because at the very end, he was not able to write, 38-year-old young man. And so I was so excited to hear about this. But then when I spoke with Sharon, she did say at this point in time, because of legalities, that they are not accepting tissue. And I was very disappointed in that, and am very hopeful, and that sometime around that they will do this. I'm wondering, my question really to you is, I wonder if I could get the tissue somehow from the pathologist. Ryan and I live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He was at the Stevenson Cancer Center. If I could secure that tissue and somehow get it to you.
Thank you for that question, Terry. And just wanted to say I'm so sorry to hear about your son's passing.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, due to regulatory restrictions, we're not able to collect tissue samples or medical records on behalf of people who have passed away. However, we are currently working on a pilot for a next of kin project to allow someone's next of kin to be able to share more information with the study. However, this is still in the pilot phase, and we're still working on developing this, so it will take time to scale up, but it's definitely feedback that we've heard, and it's something that we really want to be able to expand into in the future.
Well, that would be wonderful, because living through this for the last 2.5 years, I have lived it with my son firsthand, and I have a lot to share with a lot of people. I think that would be very helpful and beneficial, and that would be one way I could honor my son. And anything you can do in your group would be just amazing and a blessing.
Thank you for sharing that, Terry.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If it would be helpful, I can put you in touch with the person who is working on our next of kin pilot.
That'd be
Just
awesome.
to provide you more details about what that would entail.
Perfect.
I don't have many in-depth details at the moment, but I can definitely put you in contact.
That would be wonderful, Ben. I'd really, really appreciate it.
No problem.
I think Edward has his hand up.
Yes, Edward.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I missed the beginning of the presentation, so sorry if you already covered that portion. I live in Canada, and I did see on one of your slides that it does exclude Canada for in vitro testing. So I just want to make sure what we are able to do within the project and what we're not able to have per se. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Edward. It's definitely a very good question. In terms of the standard procedures for participation is available to anyone who lives in the US or Canada. So that includes answering the surveys, providing access to stored tumor samples, and also providing a saliva or blood sample. In terms of the benefits of participation for Invitae and learning more about your normal DNA, Invitae is not currently licensed to practice genetic counseling in Canada. So unfortunately, while we would like to be able to offer this to folks in Canada, we're unfortunately not able to at this time. And then similarly, for sharing back information about what we've learned from folks' tumor samples, there are regulatory restrictions that make us unable to share results for participants living in or samples resulting from New York State or Canada. So.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, so basically that would be a one-way partnership where I can send you out my samples and my infos, but you couldn't share them back with me at this moment, correct?
Correct. Yeah, you'd be able to provide information about where you've been treated, provide access to your medical record and samples, provide a saliva or blood sample, and answer surveys. And the hope there is that all of that information, when released, will help future generations. But unfortunately, for those living in Canada, we're not able to share any specific information about what we've learned from your individual sample back with you. And we understand that's frustrating. But unfortunately, regulatory restrictions prohibit us from doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Got it. Thank you.
So on that note, do you foresee in the future being able to take tissue samples from people who live outside of Canada and USA?
That's a great question. I'm not sure of the regulatory restrictions that exist outside of the US and Canada, so I don't feel comfortable providing a response for that. I'm not sure, Mary, if you have any additional insight or not on that, but.
Sure. I think that my insight is that it's really complicated because every single country has like very different regulations. So it would be quite an effort, I think, for us to expand our studies outside to other countries other than the US and Canada. I think our hope is, and what we've seen from our other projects, is that the data that we release, because it's available publicly, is used by researchers all over the world, which is very cool. But we're not able to allow participation, outside of the US and Canada. And I don't know if that'll change for us. I think that if it did, it wouldn't be for quite a long time. I think that's my answer. But at this time, it's just like very, very complicated given the differences for every single country in the way that that they're able to share like biological samples and things like that.
Thanks, Mary. Kathy, did you have a question?
Yes, I was very excited in the end of September when I saw the information that you folks put out about this project. And I immediately filled out all of the paperwork and sent it in. And my question just is, approximately how long would it be before I received a sample kit? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Kathy. We're currently in the process so a lot of our, or I should say, all of our previous projects prior to our newly launched, relaunched osteosarcoma project and the LMS project have done research grade sequencing. And now for the LMS project, we're able to perform clinical grade sequencing, which is like 1 grade higher of
Right.
sequencing. So we're currently working on testing to make sure that the sample kits that are going through our system are being sent out and received and processed properly. So we anticipate within the next couple of months that you'll be receiving a kit. So yeah, be on the lookout for that for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How many people so far have signed up?
That's a great question. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna quickly take a look. I should have had this pulled up on hand, but I do have some numbers. Just a second. Of course, my internet is being slow today. So for the LMS project, we've had 174 people click Count Me In. And of those, 134 people have filled out the consent form, which is an absolutely amazing number considering that we haven't even been launched for a month. So super exciting. We've also had about 120 people fill out the About Your Cancer and About You survey. And we had 109 people fill out the family history survey. So really, really exciting numbers to start us out. And I see we have some more hands up, but I'm not sure if that's from previous questions or if anyone has another question. So if you have another question, feel free to just come off of mute and I'm happy to answer.
Well, I do have another question, if nobody's going. Could you share with us what is the schedule of as far as the next step? Like, do you plan on going public with the result of the study? What is the time frame of the project itself, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Edward. Because we just launched in September, we're still in the initial enrollment phase of the project. So we are sharing the word about the project, allowing folks to sign up. And then we will start in the coming months sending out saliva and blood kit samples and receiving those samples back, requesting medical records. And once we start receiving those, then we'll be able to start sequencing tumor samples as well as saliva and blood samples. And from there, our computational biology team will analyze that data, aggregate it, and release it. And that process is pretty lengthy because there's a lot of information that we have to combine in terms of medical records, surveys, sequencing, and make sure that all identifying information is taken out before we release it. So I would say probably on the order of over a year in terms of getting our first data release out. Mary, did I get that right, would you say?
Yeah, no, I think that's about right. Probably I would say closer to a couple of years, just based on our previous experience again with other studies. Because if you think about it, we request medical records for everyone. On average, it takes about a month for medical records to come back for every single person. And then same thing for tissue samples. And so there's a lot of, to generate the data just takes a long time because there are those kind of delays at every single step of the process. And then the other thing we have to think about too is that we want whatever data set that we put out there to be meaningful and impactful for the scientific community, which means we want it to be a number of patients and samples that will add value. So that means we have to kind of wait and make sure that we have enough people enrolled in order to do that. And I think we're really, off to a really, really good start. So that's really exciting because again, we've been launched for 3 weeks, I think, if I am doing my math right. So we're off to a great start, but just given all the steps in the process, I would say it typically takes over a year, probably closer to 2 years would be my estimate, but we'll also keep people updated along the way to let people know kind of how things are going, how many people have enrolled, how many samples we have sequenced, and all of those things, even prior to us being able to put data, like package it all up and put it out there. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
So you're not the ones who are going to take that data and write something up, right? You're providing the data for other researchers. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So our goal is to be able to get all of the data in one place, and that's especially impactful for more rare cancers because a lot of the analyses that other research groups do require, we can get into the detailed statistics and stuff another time, but in terms of like statistical power, there's more value to more samples, and the more information we have, the more powerful that our analyses can be. So while we're not doing any specific research in terms of like drug development or anything like that, we hope that our data will be kind of like a go-to central access point for other researchers who are doing that kind of data as a jumping off point to be like, oh, wow, I already have 100 or, several hundred data points to use in my research.
And I will add too that I think that it's our goal to get the data out there, and we're not going to hold it back or anything before we publish. But since we do have computational biologists on our team, we're working with a team of, researchers and scientific leads. It's also quite possible that as we are, we're going to be concurrently kind of analyzing the data too. But I think the difference is we're not going to tie the release of the data with the publication. It's very likely that we'll release the data before we're ready to publish anything, if we happen to find something along the way. So I think it's a little bit of both, but our main goal is to get the data out there for the whole community to use and for other people to use.
Which is quite a gift to a researcher because it's very hard to gather up 200 LMS patients in one institution. So, and usually that's all they have access to is the institution they work at. So if we can get, I would like to see 500 people or even more, because the numbers matter, right? The more numbers, the more significant the findings are.
Absolutely. Great. So if there's no other questions, if there are, I'm happy to answer, but I'll finish off with one slide that I really like. And these are participants from past projects that are kind of holding up their saliva kits that we've sent them, along with some really impactful quotes. I'll give you a chance to read through them, but one that really resonates with me is a participant from Dade City, Florida, saying that this project now gives purpose to my diagnosis. Every treatment day, I will smile knowing it isn't just for me. And that's kind of what drives us forward in our mission here at the LMS project and at Count Me In. And we're so appreciative of everyone who has signed up for the project and has shared the word about the project. We really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. This is a great opportunity for our community to get some more research and some significant findings to help find more treatments for all of us. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing this today.
You're very welcome. And if there are any further questions, you can always reach us via email at info@lmsproject.org. You can call us at 651-403-5556. And then to learn more about the study and sign up, you can go to lmsproject.org. And it was great speaking with you all today. Thanks so much for your time. I had a great time speaking with you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.